At a level 400, you actually start to monitor things. You start to watch what people are searching for. It starts to inform the way you think about your content plan. Oh, people are searching for medical plans, and we don't have any data about our medical plans. Well, you're continuously improving your content based on what people are actually looking for.
All right,
Cool.
It is 12:30. Let us get started with today's episode of Ask and Praxis, and we are going to talk search optimization. So the gang is all here today, so we have a full complement of opinions, which never short of an opinion in this group. So the agenda today is we're going to continue on the theme from the last couple of sessions where we take a maturity model approach to discussing our topic for today. So today we're going to start off by talking about the differences between SharePoint search and Microsoft search, because as we were sort of prepping for this, we realized that maybe not a lot of people are super familiar with the new Microsoft search admin experience. And so it might be a really good idea to compare and contrast that with the SharePoint search, which of course all of us SharePoint people have known and loved for so long. So then we're going to go into that Microsoft Search Intelligence Center in a little bit of depth, out-of-box capabilities, external connectors, and custom connectors. All right, so moving in, Mark, maturity model away.
We love to think about maturity, even though we don't demonstrate any. So if you think about how people sort of think about or use search in their organization, there are different levels of maturity, and so a lot of organizations, especially the ones before they meet us, they're sort of there's a search box on every page. Isn't that cool? Stuff shows up when I type things in the box, and so that's a very relatively low level of maturity. You haven't really thought about how search works, how you want to drive targeted results. You haven't thought about building search driven experiences, for example. At a maybe 200 level, you might start thinking about, well, how do we promote some results? We know that people search for specific things, so let's make sure that we give them a sort of pre-wired results based on the common searches that we see. At level 300, you might start building search-driven experiences that actually become almost like targeted solutions. We did an Ask and Praxis a while back on the concept of a policy center. That's an example of a search-driven experience. You have distributed content management, but you provide a unified experience to consume that content based on the search engine in the back end. At a level 400, you actually start to monitor things. You start to watch what people are searching for. It starts to inform the way you think about your content plan. Oh, people are searching for medical plans, and we don't have any data about our medical plans. Well, you're continuously improving your content based on what people are actually looking for. Surprisingly, few organizations do that. And then maybe at the 500 level, you might be thinking about things like using AI and natural language processing to build maybe bots that provide information based on search results and things like that. But you've got to have a lot of infrastructure in place for that to work well.
I want to jump in as an IT pro. One of the things, especially when I was setting up search on-prem, I would always try to get people into 200 as quick as possible, because I felt like search was one of those untapped beauties in SharePoint. And like Mark Christman said in the chat here, most people are like, oh, there's search, and then just never thought about it again. And there was so much untapped potential there. And so things like, promoting results and some of the other stuff we're going to talk about. But then online didn't have all that rich functionality initially, so I kind of quit beating that drum. But in prepping for this session, I think there's a lot of gold in those hills now. So I'm going to start beating that drum again, because there's some really easy wins here. I really, really like it.
Cool. All right, well, let's drive home the differences between SharePoint search and Microsoft search. Mark, do you want to address these?
Sure.
Lovely audience.
I ended up talking a lot today. Sorry, folks. So SharePoint search, we've all, many of us who've been using SharePoint for a very long time have used the SharePoint search for years. So, depending on how long you've sort of been in the space, you probably know it pretty well. It's very flexible. If you remember in the old on-prem days, which a lot of people may still be on, you can build custom search results pages. You've got a search center. So there's a lot of familiarity and sort of common components that you may know because you've been using SharePoint for a long time. One of the, some of the cons of it, of only focusing on it, is you can't search content in other Microsoft 365 apps and services. It's SharePoint search. It's focused on SharePoint only. It's really not improving. Maybe I don't even remember how long ago it was that Microsoft bought Fast Search and sort of folded it in under the covers.
2013, wasn't it?
Was it that long ago?
It was earlier than that.
Probably 10. So I was
it?
thinking 10 years. That is 10 years. Holy.
It was 2010, 2009, 2010, because it was right about the time that 2010 was coming out, but it was too soon to roll it into 2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you
that makes
had to
more
bolt
sense.
it in, but it was built into 2010.
Right. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, but it wasn't rolled in. It was a separate product. Now I remember that. That's yes, exactly. Okay.
So bottom line is, there was some tremendous improvement, apparently a really long time ago, and there's really not any improvement coming along with SharePoint search anymore, because SharePoint is not a standalone thing like it used to be. So that extensibility story with things like BCS is just very dated. You're not going to see any improvements there. With Microsoft Search on the right side of the screen, more. I said most, but I think it's not most. But many of the Microsoft 365 apps and services are included in that search. So, for instance, when Stream Classic is something that can be searched with Microsoft Search. When you type into the top box on most pages that you see in Microsoft 365, that is Microsoft Search, and it reaches out much further. Microsoft's focus is entirely on Microsoft Search these days, so that's where all the improvements are going to be. There's a custom connector extensibility story, which Julie and/or Derek will talk about in a bit. And there are connections with the Microsoft Graph, so you can do a lot of really interesting things from a customization perspective. So there are some cons with that. Microsoft Search, from a user perspective, often feels a little bit less mature and less flexible. Maybe not user, but site owner or content owner perspective. We can't so easily create custom search driven pages unless we use the P&P modern search web parts, which really actually give us more capability than the old SharePoint search web part pages were. So we can use Microsoft Search, take advantage of all of its capabilities, and do some nice customizations, but it feels a bit less mature because it's newer.
I would like to add that one of the pros for Microsoft Search is that it's everywhere. So when I talk to new folks, especially if they're moving from like file shares or something into Office 365, the question always becomes, how do I find something? And so I have this whole thing that I tell them, if you ever can't find anything, go to office.com. Search from there. If you know it's in SharePoint, go to office.com, go to SharePoint, search from there. And the fact that search box is always on the top and always in the same spot is a good thing to get people used to. And that is Microsoft Search. So one of its pros is that it's consistent. It's always in that same spot. It's easy to get users used to it.
And you actually just reminded me, because you said it's everywhere, it's something I forgot to add to the list. It's also integrated with Bing. So if you use Bing as your search engine, and I might be one of the 12 people who does that every day, but if you search in Bing, you actually get a work vertical in Bing that shows you stuff from your own tenant or your own environment that you have permissions to, so that you don't have to think about, well, where is the thing? Is it in here or out there?
Yeah.
You have a unified search experience.
You just
I've added
Bing
that
it
to the slide.
Yeah.
Nobody bings it.
I Bing
and nobody says Bings it.
I do Bings though. Those are delicious. If you haven't had one, it's definitely
Bings
something
are
to check
good.
out. Oh, they're so yum. All right, let us move on. Emily, monitoring search. Maybe there's somebody in the audience who might understand this idea.
Absolutely. Definitely inspired by some of the work one of our clients is actively doing. So Mark put in the chat a comment around this idea that we still have a lot of service delivery and design when it comes to search. So very often what we see, especially in intranet builds, is we put all of our content there, we launch, so exciting. Then some of our site visitors may not be finding what they need. They're still coming, doing interrupt-driven requests, questions, emails, not going to the intranet. And one of the reasons that they may not be going there to find the information independently is maybe their search queries aren't getting them the results that they need. So with Microsoft Search, you get these search usage reports. So you can find some of these different abandoned queries, unsuccessful queries, to help you understand what people are looking for and then those results that they're getting. So it might be an opportunity for you to expand or revisit your information architecture to make sure you have things tagged correctly so that they can appear in the search pages as the correct content prioritization. I just added into the chat, there is this article about making search better within Microsoft that Bill Barr wrote about, and he references in there that good metadata typically moves an item from the bottom of the first page to the top half and from a page 2 to the bottom of a page 1. So having that information architecture does really help bring your search results and promote them. So something as little as naming a content type and tagging that to a document will actually have that appear higher in your search. So looking at this list of abandoned queries, think about which areas are important, or you might want to expand that IA. The other spot we see a lot of abandoned queries is content that lives in another system, but we are not clearly calling that out anywhere on our intranet or our collaboration sites that you can find this other content elsewhere. So they're just searching from it from our central location at the company, and then there's no data explaining that they need to go elsewhere. So sometimes that's just making a content page. So for example, maybe you use Workday as your human resources information system, and then you have your job descriptions and your competency models all in Workday. Just make a page about that on your intranet so people can find it and then go to that correct area. Because sometimes these abandoned queries are also reflecting institutional knowledge in your organization that you don't have documented.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. And not to be snarky, I'm not intending to be snarky, but I'm going to be a little bit snarky in that if Microsoft is writing these great documents around like search and how you can elevate, bring things up on your search result page by using content types, and then we see sort of the abandonment of content types in other areas of implementation. Mark and I were talking about videos not having their own content type, base level content type. It's a sad thing because they're sort of breaking themselves, like they're breaking their own features. So it's a little bit of a sad situation.
The Microsoft Hydra is a mini armed beast.
Go back to that one for
sorry.
a second. Yep.
We'll be back.
Yep. So I can't remember if we called this out or not, but this one is abandoned queries. So this is somebody did a search for something. There were results, but they didn't click them. And this is similar, but not the same as when people do a query and there are no results. So there's different ways to handle that. And I can't remember if we talked about the last one in this or not, but that's also a good thing to look at. What are people searching for? Like lunch menu or something. And if people are searching for it and not getting any results, we need to put something somewhere. We need to make sure that we're using the right keywords or something, but that's a little different than this, but also something to take a look at.
And a good call out that this recently changed. So you have a toggle now. So in my environment, I can only see data from February 14th forward in these new charts. And I'm going to put another resource link into our chat for that recent search activity report that they came out with. And then I have to toggle to the old view to get anything prior to that.
Mark just made an interesting comment in the chat. I'll just read it. That's one of my common talking points. It's not that the search technology isn't as good as the consumer search options. It's that there's different incentives from content owners. There is a reason why search engine optimization is a thing in the consumer world. And yeah, I think that's kind of spot on as a statement. Okay, enhancing search. Mark, what do you got to say?
Yes.
Say something.
and just to actually to frame this set of slides, 7 through 12 or 15 or something, these are all things that you can do in the Search and Intelligence Admin Center. So you have to have a specific admin role. And if you're a content manager or a knowledge manager and your global admin hasn't given you access to this the Search and Intelligence Center, you should be rattling that cage really hard. It's really important as a content owner for the tenant or for your intranet that you have access to that admin center. And for some reason, admins never want to give that up. That's it, a little editorial there. So into enhancing search. So Emily talked about, how do you monitor it so that you can see some things that you might need to improve in your content or terms that you might want to sort of boost, if you will, because people are searching for them. Well, we have multiple mechanisms we can use to enhance search so that we actually say, well, people are looking for this. Let's give them a result sort of up top, or let's promote something that's going to actually answer that question or that need better than just sort of showing them a bunch of random search results. So the answers section in that Search and Intelligence Admin Center is where we do that. We can set up these sort of pre-wired results, and each of the answer types, and I'm going to talk through all 5 of them, give different capabilities based on what it is we're trying to promote. Click.
Clicking. Clicked.
So one of the first, so I'm just going straight down the list, acronyms first. I actually really hate acronyms. I've worked with so many, hundreds of companies over the years, and I would say 50% of acronyms, nobody even knows what words they stand for, much less what they actually mean. So setting up an acronym definition in Search and Intelligence is an awesome thing to do. It really helps, especially for people who are new to the organization. At Simpraxis, we say SOW all the time, or SOW. It's an initialization if you say SOW. It's an acronym if you say SOW. Had to work that in. If you don't know what that is, it's meaningless, right? No, it's not a female pig. It's actually a statement of work. We have a meaning for that. There are a small group of us so that we know what that is. But in a large organization, people toss these things around all the time. That ought to be something that's a top search result if it's something it means something in your organization. So just building up your pile of acronyms and what they mean is a great capability. Click.
Clicking. Clicked.
Bookmarks are the next thing. They're really meant to promote a result. They're very much like best bets used to be if you have been rigging up search since the on-prem days. It's what should float to the top if you're searching with certain keywords. And so, I searched for best employee here, and it says clearly Emily Mancini. So because I've asked for the best employee, this thing is pre-wired and it shows me right up in the top. Now I can ignore that and move down to the search results that are below it. But if we want to promote that result, this is a great mechanism to do it. This is something that we ought to be thinking about using a lot on intranets. What's the lingo that people use to describe something, and what do we want them to get that first result for? Click.
Clicked.
Locations is new to sort of modern search or Microsoft search, and I frankly don't see anyone using it. I think it's very, very cool. So it's a location-based result, which sort of duh, right? But it brings in mapping and addresses. So you configure it by putting in an address, a latitude, a longitude, a very specific place that you want to return. So the left side is I should have said this on the first slide. The left side is how you configure it. The right side is what the end user sees. So when they search for Simpraxis World Headquarters, they see the name, they see the address, they see a map. They even can click and get directions. So we're sort of spoon feeding them the things that they're likely to want to know because they're looking for a location. You can also use custom map images. So for instance, the floor plan of your building, if you wanted to let people search for desk locations or something like that, you can wire that up and show a little map where, you know, this is where Derek's desk is in his place in Iceland. So I can walk into the apartment and get to the right place. That's pretty cool. And if you really think about some of the data that people need all the time, this is probably on the list, but you may not realize that there's a whole engine to support it. Click.
Clicked.
Q&A is the next one on the list, and it's it's very much, Q&A is a acronym. Actually, it's not. It's an initialization. Questions and answers. Sorry, Todd. Questions and answers, right? So in this structure, you provide a question and then you provide an answer to it. And one of the nice things about this particular construct is you can use a URL that's anywhere, right? So if we have in our intranet, where is somebody's searching for Borg, and that brings up the Q&A. Where is Microsoft? And I can provide a little paragraph that is essentially the answer to that particular query. So if you have FAQs that sort of traverse the tenant as opposed to being in a specific domain, this is a good place to think about manifesting them. Click.
Clicked.
If you have ponied up for Viva Topics, Viva Topics automatically become search enhancements. So that almost alone makes it worth having Viva Topics in my mind, because it's sort of free search free that you've paid for search
I was just gonna say,
and you have to manage that corpus of topics, but you get a big bang for your buck in the search experience. So this is not a shot from our Simpraxis tenant. This is from the Viva Topics page, but any topic that you approve and publish becomes a topic that boosts up to the top of the search results. And you get that little topic card that you would see if you hovered over that term in another context right at the top of a search result. So you can find people who know something about that topic. One of the things about knowledge management that was always very hard to think through in the old days was finding an expert. There they are. And all you have to do is have Viva Topics and have that topic published.
A good point. All right, let's see. Custom search verticals. Emily Mancini.
So while a
Tell us.
lot of all of those other out-of-the-box options are awesome, they're available from Microsoft Search. So as you continue down through the use case of the intranet and you're looking for content and you leave your root site or your hub site and you're going into your different communication sites, you're not necessarily going to get those results. So those bookmarks aren't going to show. Now, custom search verticals are something you can do on the site level, or you can do across the Microsoft Search and have it available across all of the sites in your organization. So depending on what you want to have, you can create one pillar in your search. So one example we have on this screen is a travel company. So maybe we want to see everything in regards to North America. Just to the right of that, we have another header of policies. So let's say we want to have a search vertical just to see all policies across the organization from search there. I can type in any word. Maybe I type in acceptable use, and then I can click on that custom search vertical that I made for policies and see anything that aligns with that. And we're doing that through the keyword query language. So you can be doing things like paths, content types, site columns.
I think this is another really good reason why content types become so important, because of being able to take distributed content, which we see a lot, where you have a silo of work that has some sort of context and you want to be able to surface that. And if you have that content type plus this search vertical, you've got an out-of-the-box solution for at least some level of findability for content across your organization. So it just makes me sad. Makes me sad when they drop the ball. External connectors. Todd, take her
Yay!
away.
So one of my favorite bits about the Microsoft Search is the ability now to bolt in results from other places. And we could do this on-prem with BCS and some other things. This is one of those things where when Office 365 Search first showed up, there wasn't a great way to do this. I didn't put it on here, but you can do the federated search, so the on-prem SharePoint search, on-prem SharePoint content can be queried from the cloud. But these external connectors are a way to do other things. So things not in Microsoft 365. The key word with all of this is to remember these are Microsoft Graph connectors. So if you start Googling or Binging, that's the thing. There's a whole list of them, probably 20 or 30. I picked my favorites. Azure DevOps, you can bolt those in. SQL, both on-prem and Azure SQL. A CSV file, so you can actually pull in the contents of a CSV file that's in SharePoint or in Azure Data Lakes and make that content queryable inside of Microsoft Search. You can also add other websites. So if you have a different website internally or externally for that matter, you can have Microsoft Search crawl that and it'll respect your robots.txt files and all those things. So this is just another step towards making that Microsoft Search bar, wherever it's at, your one-stop shop for finding anything in your company. The one that I really get excited about is file shares. So we have some customers that have to keep some stuff on-prem, or they're in this awkward, transitionary phase. You can, with a Graph connector, install a Graph data gateway on-prem and crawl and index your file shares so that you can query them up in the cloud. So that one's pretty cool. The one bad part about that one, and I think with all of them, is they're super expensive. The licensing on these is crazy. It's licensed per E5 user. We get into that, but if you're looking at that, look at the licensing stuff first, because they might price you out of that if you don't want it.
Yeah, it was pretty onerous, right?
Yeah,
if you have E5, you have some quota, but probably not enough for most organizations, and then you have to go buy it. And when we finally got things working and found out what the buy is, it wasn't pretty. So
it's like $1,000 a month for a million
for a
items.
million items. Yeah.
And so since this is all connector based, there is the ability, if if it's not natively supported, what if you want to cover something else? What if you want to index some other crazy custom thing? Click.
Yeah, we could go into that then.
Let's do that.
So there is a way to build your own custom connectors. I gotta say, architecturally speaking, this isn't the simplest thing to do. You essentially have to create a virtual machine and host the connector agent with your custom connector on that virtual machine and set it up as like a scheduled, sort of like a scheduled job type of thing. And I've reviewed the code. I haven't done one, but I've reviewed the code and it's pretty arduous. And I gotta think that probably in 99% of the things that you might want to surface, you could use a intermediary that has a connector built for it already as the thing, right? Instead of like trying to write your own, you could like say, oh, well, I'll write a custom bit of code that creates a CSV file or creates a table in SQL, and then I'll use the SQL connector that's already built to do the ingesting. So, there's probably scenarios that I don't know of or can't think of, but it is something that can be done. And it all falls under that whole graph connectors, custom graph connectors. All right, with 1 minute left, let's move on to resources. So we've got, does anybody want to highlight anything here? We got community docs links, obviously, for search stuff, and some other links. I think some of these have been posted into the chat as well, and these are all clickable. And if you need these later, just come back to our website. You can find the latest Ask and Praxis, and we'll have all the links in there, so you can get it later or see on the YouTube video. Okay, so March 8th is our next episode. I will not be here. I will be on vacation, but the other 4 wonderful Simpraxians will lead the way. We're going to talk employee directory, and then we have a big long list of back to in-person conferencing. Microsoft Collaboration Conference, I'm going to be there May 2nd through 4th. Techorama is going to be it's going to be our Antwerp going friend Todd. European Collaboration Summit is Todd, no, not Todd, Julie, Emily, Mark, and Derek. Thrive Conference is Emily and Mark, and then the 365 EduCon DC is, again, me, Emily, Mark, and Derek. And if you are dev savvy or dev interested or dev adjacent, check out my online web and our type of style publishing on YouTube of Cloud Dev Clarity, which myself and Andrew Connell talk about all things cloud development related. All right. That wraps us up for this episode. Thank you everyone for joining us as usual, and please feel free to use our form to submit other ideas or ask questions or things that you'd just like us to talk about. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask and Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues. Join us again as we release new content every other Wednesday.